So welcome back. For the last of the lab videos, I am going to split this video up for the reproductive system into a series of 2 videos, one for the male reproductive system and one for the female reproductive system, just due to the complexity of both systems. So we're going to start with the male reproductive system, which will be exercise 25. And my first image here is, of course, to show you the purpose of the reproductive system, which of course is procreation, to create new individuals through sexual reproduction. So again, we're going to start with the male reproductive system. And so as many of you know, the purpose of the male reproductive system is for the production of male gametes, which again are spermatozoa or sperm cells, as you can see here in my image. And so that's the main function of the male reproductive system, but also once the sperm cells are produced, then the male has to have a way of transporting the sperm cells. So transport of the sperm cells is another major function of the male reproductive system. And then the last function, kind of an accessory function of the reproductive system, is secretion of hormones such as testosterone. And testosterone being the big male reproductive hormone because it regulates both sperm cell production as well as the expression of secondary male characteristics. So again, those are kind of the 2 main major functions of the male reproductive system. So we'll go ahead and we'll go into the separate parts. Again, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. I know I tend to talk about the function of each of these anatomical parts, but it's my way. If I had you in lab, this would be my way of connecting the lab and the lecture. So hopefully the series of videos is helping to connect the lab to the lecture a little bit, so they're not quite so these separate entities. And it's really hard to talk about, again, the anatomy without talking about some of the function of it. So we're going to dive right in to the organs of the male reproductive system. So again, we have these organs that their main function is going to be to produce sperm cells, to support those sperm cells and nourish those sperm cells, and then also to transport those sperm cells. Again, the goal being for procreation. So the first anatomical organ that we're going to talk about is the testes. So here are the testes, and obviously the main function, as you probably already know, is the production of sperm cells for the testes. Then we have the epididymis, which you can probably see better here. So here's the epididymis right here, and the epididymis along with the ductus deferens. So here's the ductus deferens. And let me go to this one here so you can see the rest of it. So here's the epididymis and the ductus deferens here. And then along with the ejaculatory duct, so the ductus deferens will end here where the ejaculatory duct is. And then as well as the urethra. So the urethra will be, I'm losing mine, and here's the urethra all the way, down here, are going to be the primary organs that are going to transport, or ducts, I should say, to transport the sperm cells. So again, we make the sperm cells in the testes, and then to transport those sperm cells to the exterior of the body, and again, the ultimate goal into, obviously, the vagina of a female in terms of your purpose for procreation. So here is the sperm cells will travel through the epididymis, and we'll talk about they actually are stored in the epididymis, and then they'll travel through the ductus deferens all the way here down to the ejaculatory duct, and then into the urethra, okay, and then out the very tip of the penis, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the area called the glans penis. So again, these are the main ducts that are involved with transporting the sperm cells. And then we're going to talk about these glands that are really important for their contribution to fluids that are going to help form the semen. So we've got things like the seminal vesicles here. We've got things like the prostate gland right here, the bulbourethral gland, which is right here. We'll talk about in the urogenital diaphragm there. It's kind of tough to see. So those are all going to contribute fluids that are going to help form the semen. And those are important in terms of maintaining the sperm, the motility of the sperm, as well as helping to transport them outside the body. And then the penis, which again here being the main organ that provides a means of delivering the sperm cells into a female. So we're going to talk about all of these anatomical features in detail as we go through this. So I'm going to go back here and we're going to kind of start off with the testes, where it initially sperm cell production has to happen. So the testes are here, or testicles being singular, testes being plural, are here. And you can see the structure a little better here. So here's your testes. And this is, again, where sperm cell production happens. So to help sperm cell production and to help maintain the efficiency of sperm cell production, because sperm cell production actually has to happen at a certain temperature. And so that temperature that's ideal for sperm cell production is actually usually lower than the internal body temperature. So that's why we have the testes. The testes, again, are going to help maximize the sperm cell production by helping to maintain the ideal temperature for sperm cell production. So you're going to see that the testes are located within a sac called the scrotum, and you can see the scrotum here a little bit better. So it's going to be this external sac here, right here, that's going to keep the testes away from the body and, again, several degrees cooler than what our internal body temperature is. And this is, again, necessary for ideal sperm cell production. So we're inside the scrotum. If you can look here, you're going to have this muscle. They drew it. It's just this little tiny, they always draw the muscles as red and white here. So you can see, because remember, they're bound in fascicles and all that. So this little layer right here around the scrotal sac is called the dartos muscle. And it's just a layer of smooth muscle that's around the scrotum. And then we have what's called the spermatic cord, which you can see here. Here would be the spermatic cord right here. All of this right here would be the spermatic cord. And then you can see the spermatic cord a little bit better right here. So this is the spermatic cord right here. And that's, again, because they've peeled away the pelvic wall, so you don't see the pelvic wall here. So this would be the spermatic cord that is going to carry all the blood vessels, all the nerves, and also here the ductus deferens that you can see that continues on into the pelvic cavity. So the reason that the spermatic cord is also important in terms of talking about maintaining this ideal body temperature, or temperature for the sperm cell production, is that it contains what's called the cremaster muscle. So that's this outer layer of muscle here. And that cremaster muscle is going to surround the spermatic cord, and it's responsible for contracting the testes. When it contracts, it's going to pull the testes closer to the body when it's colder outside, when it's too cold for sperm cell production, to help increase the temperature in the testes. And then it will also, the cremaster muscle here will also relax if it's warmer outside, and then it'll relax and allow the testes to pull away from the body temperature, or away from the body, to help cool the testes. So again, that cremaster muscle is really important for maintaining the correct body temperature for sperm cell production, maximizing sperm cell production there. So kind of interesting. What's cool too is about the cremaster muscles, it's actually just kind of a continuation, a little narrow continuation on of the internal oblique muscles, which is kind of crazy. So just a fun fact for you, but you don't have to know that. But you do have to know that this is the cremaster muscle, and that is the muscle that's associated with the contraction of the testes, again, to help increase the warmth in the testes to maximize sperm cell production. So then inside the testes, we also have what's called the seminiferous tubules. And so let me see if I can probably, I don't know if I have here's, if you were to do a cross-section of what the testes look like on the inside, you would see that it's full of these tubules, and these are called the seminiferous tubules. And a little later, we'll get into what exactly happens in the seminiferous tubules, but obviously this is where sperm cells are produced. So that's the main function of those seminiferous tubules. You can see they kind of tried to show them here. These would be the seminiferous tubules there. Okay, so that's the testes where the sperm cell production is going to happen. Then we have all of the male ducts that are important for transporting the sperm to the outside of the body. So I'm going to go to this model because this probably is the best model in terms of showing all of the ducts associated with transporting sperm. So the first one is going to be the epididymis. So after we make the sperm cells in the seminiferous tubules of the testes, they'll be transported to the epididymis, which is kind of on the back side or the posterior side of the testes. And here, this is where sperm cells are going to mature. This is the site of sperm cell maturation. And so the sperm cells will complete their maturation process, and then they'll be stored there until, again, expelled during ejaculation. So there is some smooth muscle in the walls of the epididymis to help push those sperm cells along during ejaculation with these peristaltic contractions. So peristaltic contractions of the epididymis will then push the sperm into what's called the ductus deferens. And the ductus deferens will actually have a thicker, smooth muscle wall because, as you can see, the peristaltic contractions of the ductus deferens have to carry the sperm cells all the way up and around here to the ejaculatory duct. So it's quite a ways for the sperm cells to travel. So they have a much longer distance to travel through the pelvic cavity, through the ductus deferens. So again, we make the sperm cells in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. They move into the epididymis, and then if you look here, the sperm cells are going to travel up the ductus deferens, okay, into the ampulla of the ductus deferens, and then into the ejaculatory duct. Now, the ejaculatory duct is where the ductus deferens and the duct from the seminal vesicle are going to meet. And so the seminal vesicle here has a duct that will also open up into the ejaculatory duct. And we'll come back and talk about the seminal vesicle and what it does when we talk about some of these glands that help to make the semen in a few minutes. Okay, so the ejaculatory duct here is going to then carry the sperm to the urethra. So here is where the ejaculatory duct is going to open into the urethra. And the urethra, there we go. The urethra here then will actually carry the sperm cells from the ejaculatory ducts all the way out to the exterior. And in the case of sexual intercourse, into the female body. So when we talk about the urethra, again, this is obviously a very different feature in the female reproductive system because here the urethra is this shared pathway for both urine and for sperm cell, for the sperm cells to move and be expelled outside of the body. So again, it's very different than the female anatomy because the female anatomy, the vagina and the urethra are separate. They're separate openings. So that's one major difference between, in terms of if you're talking about sexual dimorphism, that's one major difference between the male anatomy and the female anatomy. So the male anatomy has this shared pathway between how urine is expelled as well as how sperm is expelled. So we end up in the urethra, and the urethra is actually broken up into three separate parts. We have what's called the prostatic urethra. The prostatic urethra is going to be, of course, the portion of the urethra that's surrounded by the prostate gland, this kind of chestnut-shaped gland right here. And then we have from the base of the prostate here, at the urogenital diaphragm, is going to be the membranous urethra. And this is going to extend through, here is this white layer here. This is the urogenital diaphragm. And so the membranous urethra is going to extend through the urogenital diaphragm and then into the penis, at the root of the penis here. And then at this point, now the urethra becomes what's called the spongy urethra. Sorry, I keep actually accidentally clicking on that there. So this is the spongy urethra. Sometimes it's called more rarely the penile urethra, but actually, believe it or not, mostly it's called the spongy urethra because we'll talk about it moves through this corpus spongiosum layer. So again, just to show you those three parts of the urethra, we have the prostatic urethra here, then we have the membranous urethra here, and then we have the spongy urethra here, all the way here. So the spongy urethra is obviously the longest portion of the urethra. And this will extend all the way out to the exterior at the end of what we call the external urethral orifice here. Okay, so that covers the urethra. So let's go into some of these accessory reproductive glands. So as the sperm passes through these ducts, fluids are going to be produced by these accessory glands, and those fluids are going to provide water, they're going to provide buffers, usually alkaline buffers, because the environment of the female vagina is acidic. So they'll also provide nutrients to support sperm motility and survival. So all of these glands, these accessory glands that we're going to talk about, the seminal vesicles, the prostate, the bulbourethral glands, are all going to provide this fluid that, along with the sperm, is going to make up the semen. So the sperm plus this fluid that these accessory glands are going to make is called the seminal fluid or semen. So we're going to talk about these three glands. Again, we'll talk about the seminal vesicles here. We're going to talk about the prostate gland here. And then we'll also talk about, and number 8 here, the bulbourethral glands here, this little tiny pea-shaped gland. So the first one we're going to talk about is the seminal vesicles, because the seminal vesicles are going to produce, one, they're kind of first in the pathway, right? 2, also, they're going to produce or make up about 60% of the fluids that make up semen. So it's a very important gland for the production of semen. So you have these seminal vesicles. They're paired on both sides, and they're found kind of, if you look back here on the posterior side, so on the back side or posterior side of the urinary bladder. So here's the urinary bladder. And again, remember, this is the ampulla of the ductus deferens here. It joins the duct of the seminal vesicles here to form the ejaculatory duct. So the seminal vesicles are going to release their fluids into the ejaculatory duct. And again, these fluids are going to be really important because the fluid from the seminal vesicle is going to be alkaline again. So that alkaline fluid is going to be important again for helping to neutralize the acidic environment of the female reproductive system. Also, it's going to contain fructose in it. So that fructose is a very simple sugar that will help to nourish those sperm cells as they make their journey. And then that it also helps, all of this helps to kind of promote sperm motility. So especially in terms of providing the water production. So the seminal vesicles also are going to release water, and that helps to increase sperm motility as well. So all of that produced by the seminal vesicles is again going to be dumped into this very short ejaculatory duct, and that will all help to increase sperm motility. So the seminal vesicles are very important in terms of production of semen. I mean, they're all important glands, but they just happen to be the largest portion or percentage of the production of the seminal fluid, the fluid portion of the seminal fluid. So then we have the prostate gland here. Here's the lovely prostate gland. It is sometimes people call it chestnut shaped or walnut shaped. I don't know why, but that always seems to be the description for the prostate gland. And it's interesting because it encircles so here it circles around or encircles the urethra, hence the name prostatic urethra. And the prostate gland is going to secrete this kind of milky substance that contains these protein digesting enzymes. And these protein digesting enzymes that help to break down proteins are going to help to kind of thin the semen. And by thinning the semen, that helps to increase the sperm motility. So again, it's all about sperm motility in terms of the journey that the sperm cells have to make. And you'll see that I have you watch a video for extra credit called The Great Sperm Race, and you kind of get a greater idea of what a feat it is for these sperm cells to actually reach an ova, an egg, within the female reproductive tract. So it's really a great video. I really suggest that you watch it because it's just, I don't want to ruin too much of it, but it's really interesting in how they present the reproductive tract on a large scale, and it'll capture your attention, but also if you watch it after you've watched the reproductive lectures, I think it'll really help kind of put things in place. So please watch that if you can for extra credit. It's a great series, and you can find it all on YouTube. So again, there's the prostate gland. Now what's interesting, so the prostate gland also produces, again, an alkaline substance as well that helps, again, to neutralize the acidity of the female reproductive tract. And it makes up about 25% of the semen volume. So prostate gland here. But what's really interesting is that in men that are over 45 years old, they can have something happen. It's pretty common for the prostate to enlarge. And as that prostate enlarges, you can see how it would constrict the flow of urine here. So again, here's the urinary bladder right here. And you can see how if the prostate enlarged, it could constrict that area of the prostatic urethra, decreasing urine flow here. And we call that, when this occurs, benign hypertrophy, or BPH. And it's very treatable. It's treatable with meds, in extreme cases surgery, but mostly with meds. And that is typically why older men have to go to the bathroom more often. They have to void more often. So just kind of some interesting information for you. So then we have, so there's the prostate gland here. And then we have the third accessory gland, which is, I don't know why my favorite to say, I like the bulbourethral glands, or more traditionally, they'll be called the Cowper glands. So I kind of like bulbourethral. I don't know why. It just kind of flows well. Maybe I've been up too late and doing these anatomy videos too long, but this is the bulbourethral gland here, and it is paired. You have one on each side, so you can't. It's not shown or depicted here, but you do have one on each side. So it's about a pea-sized or pea-shaped gland here, and again, you can call it either the Cowper's gland or the bulbourethral gland. Sometimes people like to remember Cowper's gland because it's shorter, but it also, again, gives credit to the scientists who helped discover it. So these bulbourethral glands are actually embedded in the urogenital diaphragm here. So that's one easy way to locate them, is look for the urogenital diaphragm, and then you'll find the bulbourethral glands on either side. And then these glands are important for, again, just producing an alkaline mucus that helps to neutralize the, again, acidic environment of the vagina, as well as it helps to lubricate the spongy urethra to increase sperm motility. So those are the 3 accessory glands. So again, we have seminal vesicles here, we have the prostate gland here, and then we have the bulbourethral glands there. Okay, so let's get into now the external genitals, which is the scrotum and the penis. So again, very important for conveying sperm into the vagina during what we would say more formally, we would call coitus, which is your sexual intercourse. So the penis is obviously the organ that is important for this task. And so when we talk about the penis, we'll break it up into 3 separate parts. And it's easier to see these 3 separate parts if you look on page 295. There's figure 25.4. You can kind of follow along. And then I'll show you these 3 separate parts here as well. So when we talk about the penis, we have what's called the root of the penis. And so the root of the penis is going to start, that's the portion of the penis that starts at the urogenital diaphragm, so here, okay? And it's going to extend all the way to the pelvic, to the pelvic wall here, okay? So all the way to the pelvic wall, here's the pelvic wall. So here is the root of the penis, from here to here, okay? So there's the root of the penis. And then the shaft of the penis is going to be this portion from here to here, okay? And then the tip of the penis will be called, it's an enlarged area of the penis at the very distal end. So you can see it's enlarged starting here, starting right here. This enlarged portion of the penis, the tip of the penis, is going to be called the glans penis. And if you look on the glans penis, so you can see here, sorry, and I do have a labeled diagram over here for you, but I ended up, I'm just going to point out all the structures on this diagram because it gets so busy over here. So the glans penis is going to be this portion and large portion here, and then you'll see you have what's called the prepuce. Here, this is the prepuce right here. It's this extra loose skin, okay, that forms this kind of circular fold of skin around the penis. So this would be called the prepuce or also the foreskin, okay? And this is what is removed right here during circumcisions. So that's, again, called the foreskin or the prepuce. And again, that's that loose skin that surrounds, it's going to surround the glans penis here. So I keep losing my pointer there. There we go. So that portion right there, that's going to be the prepuce. And again, this is the glans penis, this whole portion here. Okay, so then let's talk internal anatomy of the penis. So when you look at the penis, you're going to have these 3 elongated cylinders of erectile tissue. And again, you can see this best on your diagram on page 295. So you're going to have these paired posterior columns or cylinders called the corpora cavernosa. And so you only see one of those. There's one on each side. So you only see one of them. This is the corpora cavernosa right here. And again, you can see these paired columns a little bit better on your diagram on page 295. But again, so here is the corpora cavernosa, and then here is going to be the corpora spongi, or corpus, sorry, because corpora is going to be the plural. So each one is the corpus cavernosum, and together they're called the corpora cavernosum. Or cavernosa, sorry. And then you have the corpus spongiosum. And the corpus spongiosum here is going to surround the spongy urethra. So it's going to basically encircle and be a better description of it. So the corpus spongiosum is going to encircle the spongy urethra. if that helps you kind of to picture this a little bit better, because it's kind of this, awkward diagram where you're looking at this sagittal section here. So hopefully that helps you to kind of picture that a little bit better. And the corpus spongiosum here will end here at the external urethral orifice here. So again, these are just these 3 columns of this erectile tissue. And by erectile, again, that just means that it will fill with blood during your sexual stimulation to help stiffen and enlarge the penis during an erection. So that's the main function of these 3 columns. Their main function is just as erectile tissue for the purpose of an erection. And again, that helps to transport the sperm into the female vagina. So I think that's all I had to say about the internal anatomy of the penis. If I forgot something, I'll go ahead and post it for you just in case. But I think that's all you had to know in terms of the internal anatomy for the penis. So hopefully that helps you to go through this. Believe it or not, you may be a male thinking, I know my anatomy pretty well, but once you get into it, same with you females, when we get to the female reproductive system, you may think you know your anatomy pretty well, but the reproductive system is a lot more complicated than we make it out to be. So once you really dive into it, it is a lot more complicated than we think it is. So let's get into the very last section of this lab, which will be looking at kind of the histology of male organs. And we're going to take a look at what the cross-section of the seminiferous tubules would look like, mainly because I think this will help you in terms of your lecture. So hopefully this helps to tie back to lecture here a little bit. So here, if you were to take, again, a microscopic look at the testes, and you look into the seminiferous tubules, that's what we're going to do here. We're going to go ahead and section through one of the actual tubules. So you can see they blew up the tubule, one of the seminiferous tubules here, and they're going to section it, and it's going to be like you're looking into the lumen of a hose, right? If this section of the seminiferous tubule is a hose, here you're looking into the hose here, or looking into the seminiferous tubule here, okay? And so because the seminiferous tubules are where sperm cells are produced and developed, it's kind of important to understand what the histology of it looks like. So if you look up against the walls of the tubule here, on the outside walls of the tubule here, you're going to have what are called your spermatogonia. And those are going to be the what we call the diploid cells, because remember, when we're making our reproductive cells, we're not going through mitosis, we're going through meiosis. So again, meiosis is this, we go through this in lecture, it's this separate division process for cells so that we can produce what are called haploid cells, okay? So we start with our spermatogonia. If you haven't watched this in lecture, we get into this in lecture. So here's your spermatogonia cells, and these cells are going to undergo meiosis with an E, and I always joke that it's meiosis with an E, so that you could remember there's an E in sex and there's an E in meiosis. So to produce your sex cells, your cells have to undergo meiosis. So the spermatogonia, diploid spermatogonia, are going to undergo meiosis to produce 4 haploid sperm cells. And so these sperm cells are, as they move towards the lumen, are going to mature, and at the very center of the lumen of the seminiferous tubules, that's where you're going to have the actual mature sperm cells that have developed the flagellum and that have developed midpiece with the mitochondria, all that we're going to talk about. So then in between the seminiferous tubules here, you're going to have what are called the interstitial cells, or you'll also hear them called the cells of Leydig. So cells of Leydig, capital Leydig. So you can again identify them as either. I learned cells of Leydig, so when I initially learned anatomy, because we were kind of more old school learning up the names, but I think interstitial cells are probably more commonly used today. So these interstitial cells are between the seminiferous tubules, and they're going to be the cells that secrete testosterone. Again, testosterone being important again for driving sperm cell production, but also again for the production of secondary sex characteristics for men. Okay, so those are the interstitial cells. So then when we talk about these sperm cells, again, as these haploid spermatids, what we call spermatids here, are pushed inward, those cells will mature to form the flagellum and the midpiece until you have the most mature sperm cells in the center or in the lumen of the seminiferous tubules. And those sperm cells, when they're mature, are going to have what's called a head. So here's the head, and then a midpiece and a tail. And the head of the sperm cell is going to contain the genetic information. So it's going to contain the haploid genetic information that's needed, right, to fuse with the ovum, the genetic information from the ovum to create a complete set of genetic material, okay, for a new individual. So your head of the sperm cell is going to contain the genetic material. It's also going to contain what's called the acrosome. So the acrosome is this cap right here that they're showing you. Here's the acrosome, this cap. And that acrosome, it's going to contain materials that are important for kind of digesting the outer portions of the ova, so that the genetic material from the sperm cell can make it to the interior of the egg. So that's the importance of the acrosome. And then you have the midpiece here, and the midpiece is going to contain all these mitochondria, which they put in red here. And that's going to be important for producing the ATP that's going to power the flagellum, which is the main portion of the tail. So the tail here in yellow consists of flagellum for propulsion, obviously. So those are the main parts of the sperm cell. So I think that's it for the male reproductive system. Again, if I left anything out, please feel free to send me your questions, and then we'll be back here with a second video on the female reproductive system.